Rich Dad, Poor Dad, by Robert T. Kiyosaki. Introduction. Imagine a 9-year-old boy. It's 1956, a Saturday, and the sun is shining, but not for him. He's just been told by his wealthy friend's mother that he can't come to their beach house for the weekend. And the reason stings more than any childhood scrape or fall. He was told he couldn't come because he was a poor kid. That one single moment of exclusion lit a fire in this young boy. He went home to his father, a brilliant, highly educated man, the head of education for the state of Hawaii, and asked a simple, life-changing question. "Dad, can you tell me how to get rich?" His father, a good man who believed in studying hard and getting a safe, secure job, looked up from his newspaper and said, "Well, son, if you want to be rich, you have to learn to make money." But when the boy asked how, his father could only smile and say, "Use your head." That was his father's way of saying, "I don't really know the answer." This young boy, Robert Kiyosaki, was lucky. Because he had another father. A second father figure. This was his best friend's dad, a man who never finished the 8th grade but was on his way to becoming one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii. One dad would say, "The love of money is the root of all evil." The other would say, "The lack of money is the root of all evil." One dad taught him how to write an impressive resume to find a good job. The other taught him how to write a strong business plan to create jobs. One struggled financially his entire life, despite a brilliant mind and a government pension. The other died leaving tens of millions of dollars to his family and charities. This is the story of having two dads, a rich dad and a poor dad, and the incredible, often contradictory, lessons they taught. The book we're exploring today, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, has sold over 40 million copies and transformed the way millions of people think about money, work, and wealth. And my promise to you today is that by the end of our time together, you will understand the fundamental secret that the rich teach their children about money, a secret that the poor and middle class often miss entirely. You will learn why working for a paycheck is one of the riskiest things you can do, and how you can start building real wealth, not by working harder, but by understanding how money truly works. This isn't just about getting rich. It's about achieving financial freedom. So, let's begin. Book summary. The journey begins with that simple, painful question from a 9-year-old boy who just wanted to understand the difference between his family and the rich families at his school. His own father, the man he called his poor dad, was a pillar of the community. A brilliant academic with a PhD, who went to Stanford, the University of Chicago, and Northwestern on full scholarships. He believed in the system: study hard, get good grades, and find a safe, secure job with a big company and great benefits. To him, a government job with a pension was the pinnacle of success. His home was his largest investment, his greatest asset. But Robert's best friend Mike had a different kind of father. This was his rich dad. A man who never finished the 8th grade, but who owned warehouses, a construction company, and a chain of stores. He didn't talk about job security, he talked about financial freedom. He didn't believe your house was an asset, he believed it was a liability. He saw the world through a completely different lens. Having two father figures offering such conflicting advice was confusing. Poor Dad would say, "I can't afford it." It was a statement, an end to the conversation. Rich Dad forbade those words. He insisted on asking a question instead: "How can I afford it?" One phrase shuts your brain down. The other forces it to open up, to think, to find solutions. One was a sign of mental laziness, the other was mental exercise. And it was this simple shift in thinking that set Robert on a new path. At the age of 9, he decided he wanted to learn about money from his rich dad. So, he and his friend Mike went to Rich Dad and asked him to teach them how to get rich. Rich Dad's response was not what they expected. He smiled and made them an offer. "I'll teach you," he said, "but not in a classroom. You'll work for me. For 10 cents an hour." Even in 1956, 10 cents an hour was painfully low. But they agreed. Their first job was working in one of Rich Dad's convenience stores, dusting canned goods for 3 hours every Saturday. It was excruciatingly boring work. After 3 weeks, Robert had earned a grand total of 90 cents. The comic books he wanted to buy cost 10 cents each, so his entire month's salary could barely buy him a few. He was ready to quit. He felt used, underpaid, and cheated. He hadn't learned a single thing about getting rich. He was just a slave for 10 cents an hour. He told Mike he was done. Mike just smiled. "Dad said this would happen," he told Robert. "He said to come see him when you were ready to quit." Robert was furious. He had been set up. He marched into Rich Dad's office, ready for a fight, ready to demand the raise his own poor dad told him he deserved. Rich Dad listened patiently as the 9-year-old boy poured out his frustrations. "You didn't teach me anything. You're just greedy. This is cruel." When he was done, Rich Dad looked at him calmly and said, "I am teaching you." He explained that life is the best teacher, and life doesn't talk to you. It just pushes you around. Each push is life saying, "Wake up. There's something I want you to learn." He told Robert that most people let life push them around. They get up every day, go to a job they don't love, and work for money, hoping a paycheck will quiet their fears, the fear of not paying their bills, the fear of being fired, the fear of starting over. But more money rarely solves the problem. In fact, it often makes it worse. When people get a raise, what's the first thing they usually do? They increase their spending. They buy a bigger house, a new car, and they get into more debt. This is the pattern. Get up, go to work, pay bills. It's a cycle driven by two emotions, fear and greed. First, the fear of being without money motivates you to work hard. Then, once you get that paycheck, greed or desire kicks in, and you start thinking about all the wonderful things money can buy. This, Rich Dad explained, is the rat race. The only way out is to stop working for money and learn how to have money work for you. And that was the real first lesson. "I'm glad you got angry about working for 10 cents an hour," Rich Dad said. "If you had just accepted it, I couldn't teach you." True learning requires passion, and passion is a combination of anger and love. He then made Robert a new offer. "Come back to work," he said. "But this time, I'm going to pay you nothing." Robert couldn't believe it. But he agreed. He and Mike went back to dusting cans for free for another 3 weeks. They missed their baseball games and couldn't buy comic books. The temptation to quit was enormous. One Saturday, Rich Dad came by with 2 ice cream bars and took them for a walk. He began to tempt them. He offered them a raise to 25 cents an hour. Then $1 an hour. Then $2 an hour. For a 9-year-old in 1956, $2 an hour was a fortune. Robert's brain was screaming, "Take it," but somehow, he stayed silent. The offers got so ridiculously high, $5 an hour, that the temptation finally broke. A calm set in. The weak, needy part of his soul that had a price was silenced. Rich Dad smiled. "Good," he said. "Most people have a price. And they have it because of fear and greed. By not giving in to your emotions, you were able to delay your reaction and think. That is the first step to getting out of the rat race." The real lesson wasn't about pay. It was about seeing opportunities. By working for free, their minds were forced to look for ways to make money that didn't involve a paycheck. And one day, Robert noticed something. Mrs. Martin, the store manager, was tearing the top half of the covers off the comic books that didn't sell and throwing the rest of the book away. The distributor just wanted the cover back for credit. A light bulb went off. Robert asked the distributor if they could have the old comics. The man agreed, as long as they promised not to sell them. So Robert and Mike started their first business. They opened a comic book library in Mike's basement. They charged the neighborhood kids 10 cents for admission, and they could read as many comics as they wanted for 2 hours. It was a huge success. They were averaging over $9 a week, far more than their 10 cents an hour wages, and they weren't even physically there most of the time. They had hired Mike's little sister as the librarian for $1 a week. Their money was now working for them. They had learned lesson number 1. The rich don't work for money. They have money work for them. This leads us to the most important lesson in the entire book, the foundation upon which all wealth is built, financial literacy. Rich Dad told Robert, if you want to be rich, you need to be financially literate, and he boiled it down to one simple rule. Rule number 1, you must know the difference between an asset and a liability, and buy assets. That's it. That's the only rule. It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But most people struggle their entire lives because they don't understand this profound difference. Rich Dad didn't use complicated dictionary definitions. He used pictures and simple words. He drew a diagram of an income statement and a balance sheet. He explained that an income statement measures cash coming in income and cash going out expenses. A balance sheet lists your assets and your liabilities. Then he gave the boys the simplest definitions you will ever hear. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. That's all you need to know. If you want to be rich, spend your life buying assets. If you want to be poor or middle class, spend your life buying liabilities that you think are assets. Let's look at how this plays out. The cash flow pattern of a poor person is simple. They get a job, the money comes in as income, and it goes straight out to pay for taxes, rent, food, and transportation. There are no assets. The cash flow pattern of the middle class looks a little different, but it leads to the same trap. They get a higher paying job, which brings in more income. But then they buy liabilities they think are assets. The biggest one? Their house. Now, this is where Rich Dad's ideas really challenge conventional wisdom. For generations, we've been told that our house is our biggest asset. But is it? Does your house put money in your pocket every month? No. It takes money out. You have a mortgage payment, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and utilities. The money flows out of your pocket through the expense column. When a young couple's income goes up, they often buy a bigger house. This leads to bigger expenses. They also buy a new car on credit, new furniture on credit. Their liability column fills up with mortgage debt and credit card debt. This is the very definition of the rat race. They work harder and harder, but their expenses just keep pace with their income, and they never get ahead. Now look at the cash flow pattern of the rich. They focus on buying assets. Real assets. Things like businesses that don't require their presence, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, income-generating real estate, and intellectual property like royalties from a book or patent. These assets generate income. The income from their assets pays for their expenses. Any leftover money is reinvested back into the asset column to buy more assets. This creates a powerful, self-perpetuating cycle. Their asset column grows, which means the income it produces grows, which means they can buy even more assets. That is why the rich get richer. Their money is working for them, 24 hours a day, generating more money. The poor and middle class work for their money. The rich have their money work for them. This understanding leads directly to the third great lesson. Mind your own business. Rich Dad explained that there's a huge difference between your profession and your business. Most people confuse the two. When you ask them, "What is your business?" they'll say something like, "I'm a banker" or "I'm a teacher." That's their profession. That's how they generate income to pay the bills. But it's not their business. Your business revolves around your asset column, not your income column. Robert Kiyosaki tells a powerful story about Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's. Kroc once asked a group of MBA students what business he was in. They all laughed and said, "Everyone knows you're in the hamburger business." Kroc chuckled. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "I'm not in the hamburger business. My business is real estate." His profession was selling hamburger franchises. But his business was accumulating the valuable real estate underneath those franchises. Today, McDonald's is one of the largest single owners of real estate in the world. This is the key. You can keep your daytime job, that's your profession. But you need to spend your time and any extra money acquiring real assets, that's your business. Don't spend your life making someone else rich. Start minding your own business. Keep your expenses low, reduce your liabilities, and diligently build a column of solid, income-producing assets. Once a dollar goes into your asset column, think of it as your employee. Its only job is to work 24/7 to make more dollars and buy you more employees. As your cash flow grows, then you can buy luxuries. This is a crucial distinction. The rich buy luxuries last, while the poor and middle class tend to buy them first. The poor and middle class buy a big house or a fancy car on credit because they want to look rich. But in reality, they're just getting deeper into debt. The truly rich build their asset column first. Then, the income generated from their assets buys their luxuries. When Robert Kiyosaki wanted a Porsche, he didn't take out a loan. He bought more real estate properties. He waited until the cash flow from those new assets was strong enough to pay for the car. The asset bought the luxury. This is the reward for being financially intelligent. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds good, but what about taxes? The government will just take it all anyway. This brings us to the fourth lesson, which is the history of taxes and the power of corporations. Rich Dad explained that the idea of income tax was originally sold to the poor and middle class as a way to punish the rich. It was a Robin Hood idea: take from the rich and give to the poor. The masses voted for it, and it became law. But here's the twist. The government's appetite for money grew so large that taxes soon needed to be levied on the middle class, and then they trickled all the way down. The very people who voted for it ended up paying for it. The rich, however, played a different game. They used their financial knowledge to outsmart the system. Their greatest secret? The corporation. A corporation isn't a big building. It's a legal entity that allows you to do things an individual cannot. The biggest advantage is in how expenses are treated. An employee earns money, gets taxed on that money, and then tries to live on what's left. A corporation, on the other hand, earns money, spends everything it can on legitimate business expenses, and is taxed on whatever is left over. This is one of the biggest legal tax loopholes the rich use. By owning a corporation, things that would normally be personal expenses can become pre-tax business expenses. A vacation can be a board meeting in Hawaii. A portion of your car payments, insurance, and repairs can be company expenses. Some restaurant meals become business expenses. You play by a different set of rules. A corporation also provides protection from lawsuits. The rich often control everything but own nothing directly. Their assets are held in corporations and trusts, shielding them from creditors. The poor and middle class try to own everything in their own name, which leaves them vulnerable. Understanding the law and using corporations is like the difference between walking and flying when it comes to building long-term wealth. So, the first 4 lessons give us a powerful framework. 1. The rich have money work for them. 2. They understand the difference between assets and liabilities. 3. They mind their own business by building their asset column. 4. They use corporations to protect their wealth and minimize taxes. But there's still a missing piece. Where do these assets come from? This leads us to the 5th lesson. The rich invent money. Robert Kiyosaki says that inside each of us is a brave, brilliant, and daring financial genius. But for most of us, that genius is asleep, held back by self-doubt and fear. In the real world, it's not always the smart that get ahead, but the bold. Your financial genius requires both technical knowledge and courage. The fear of losing money is real, and it paralyzes most people. Rich Dad taught Robert that the primary difference between a rich person and a poor person is how they handle that fear. He said, "I have never met a rich person who has never lost money. But I have met a lot of poor people who have never lost a dime. Investing, that is. Winning, in any field, usually follows losing. You fall off a bike many times before you learn to ride it. A great golfer has lost more golf balls than a beginner has ever played. For winners, failure is inspiration. For losers, failure is defeat." Rich Dad loved the Texan attitude. If you're going to go broke, they say, go big. He would tell the story of the Alamo, a tragic military defeat where everyone lost. But how did Texans handle that failure? They shout, "Remember the Alamo." They turned a failure into a rallying cry that inspires them to become winners. This is the mindset needed to invent money. It's about seeing opportunities that others miss. It's about being creative and taking calculated risks. In today's world, wealth is in information. A great deal isn't something you see with your eyes, it's something you see with your mind. You need to train your mind to recognize opportunities. And often, these opportunities are created. You don't find them, you invent them. For example, when the Phoenix real estate market crashed in the early 90s, everyone was running away. People were terrified. The news was filled with doom and gloom. But Robert, using his financial intelligence, saw a massive opportunity. He bought properties for pennies on the dollar from people who were desperate to sell. He wasn't just buying real estate, he was buying a bargain, created by a market shift that scared everyone else away. This is what it means to invent money. It's having the financial IQ to see what others miss, and the courage to act when others are paralyzed by fear. This leads us to the final lesson, which ties everything together. Work to learn, don't work for money. Poor Dad believed in specialization. He got his doctorate and became an expert in his field, which is what schools traditionally reward. But Rich Dad advised the opposite. He said, "You want to know a little about a lot." He groomed Robert and Mike by having them work in every part of his empire, from accounting to construction, from sales to marketing. He wanted them to understand the whole system, not just one piece of it. The most important specialized skills for success, Rich Dad believed, are sales and marketing. The ability to communicate, to sell an idea, a product, or yourself, is the base skill of personal success. Most people are terrible at this because they fear rejection. Robert tells the story of a young, talented journalist in Singapore who wanted to be a best-selling author. Her writing was excellent, but her books went nowhere. Robert suggested she take a course in sales training. The woman was deeply offended. "I have a master's degree in English literature," she said. "I went to school so I wouldn't have to be a salesperson. I hate salespeople." Robert picked up one of his books and pointed to the cover. "It says best-selling author, not best writing author," he explained. "I am a terrible writer." "You are a great writer." "I went to sales school." "You have a master's degree." Put them together, and you get a best-selling author and a best-writing author. She refused, unable to see that she was just one skill away from great wealth. The world is filled with talented people who are poor. They focus on building a better hamburger, but know nothing about the business systems required to sell and deliver that hamburger. McDonald's doesn't make the best hamburger, but they are the best at business systems. So, seek work for what you will earn more than what you will earn. Before getting trapped in the rat race, look down the road and ask what skills you want to acquire. Robert Kiyosaki himself, after serving in the Marines to learn leadership, took a job at Xerox. Why? Because they had one of the best sales training programs in America. He was shy and terrified of selling, but he knew he had to conquer that fear to succeed. He worked there for 4 years until he was consistently one of their top salespeople, and then he quit to start his own business. He wasn't working for the paycheck. He was working to learn. So there you have it. The 6 core lessons from Rich Dad. They're not just about money. They are a mindset, a way of seeing the world that is fundamentally different from what most of us are taught. It's a shift from being a passive passenger in your financial life to being the driver. From being pushed around by life, to grabbing the wheel and charting your own course. Commentary. So, what do we take away from all of this? Rich Dad, Poor Dad is not a step-by-step guide. It doesn't tell you exactly which stocks to buy or what real estate to invest in. Its power lies in something much deeper. It fundamentally changes your perspective on money and wealth. It's designed to awaken the financial genius that Kiyosaki believes lies dormant in each of us. The most profound lesson, for me, is the redefinition of wealth itself. It's not about how much money you make, it's about how much you keep and how hard that money works for you. True wealth is measured in time. How long could you survive if you stopped working today? That is a powerful question, and one that forces you to look beyond the paycheck and toward building a system for financial freedom. The idea that your house is not an asset is, for many, the most jarring concept in the book. But when you look at it through the simple lens of cash flow, it makes perfect sense. Does it put money in your pocket, or take it out? This simple, almost childlike definition cuts through all the complex financial jargon and gets to the heart of what builds wealth. It forces us to be honest about our spending habits and the liabilities we've been told are assets. And perhaps the most empowering message is the idea of working to learn, not just to earn. In a world that is changing faster than ever, specialization can be a trap. The skills that are valuable today might be obsolete tomorrow. Kiyosaki's advice to become a generalist, to learn about accounting, investing, marketing, and law, is more relevant now than ever before. It's about building a toolbox of skills that allows you to adapt, see opportunities, and create your own path, rather than depending on a single employer for your security. So, where do you start? It can feel overwhelming. But Kiyosaki emphasizes starting small. The journey doesn't begin with $1 million investment. It begins with a single choice, and that choice is to invest in your greatest asset, your mind. If you want to take one simple, practical action today, try this. For the next month, track every dollar you spend. Not to judge yourself, but simply to become aware. At the end of the month, take a look at your spending and ask yourself a simple question for each expense. Did this purchase an asset or a liability? Did this put money in my pocket or take it out? That one small act of awareness is the first step out of the rat race. It's the beginning of thinking like the rich. That was a deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. We've explored the core lessons today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only take you so far. The real magic happens when you read the book for yourself. It's in the quiet moments, when a particular story or a simple phrase hits you in a way you didn't expect. This podcast is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today has resonated with you, I truly encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see your financial future. You'll find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It lets us know we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep growing together.